Welcome. Like I said, when we went down this journey, we spent a lot of time learning from other school districts. What's kind of unique, I think, about starting a digital learning environment is the fact that there are no experts in the field. We're all kind of starting this in our school districts, and there aren't too many school districts that have somebody come in that has been through this to start it for your school district. You guys are kind of learning from those that have gone before you, and hopefully adjusting that to fit the needs of your school district. I wish that there was a prepackaged kit that I could tell you to go out and buy that would have all the components and all of the necessary things that you need to make it successful for your school district. It does not exist. What we have to do is we have to ask questions and find out what others have done, what things have worked for other school districts, what haven't worked for school districts. And then tweak those, because all of our school districts are different. We all have unique characteristics about our school district that make us special for our community. But in the end, we want to make sure that whatever path we go down is as smooth as possible for our teachers and our students in our communities. Unfortunately, this path looks a lot more like this. It's not a straight, smooth road. Working with technology, it's going to be filled with curves and turns along the way. So what we have to do is we have to anticipate what those challenges are going to be, anticipate what the barriers are going to be, and try to plan ahead as best as we can. The other thing is that we can make things more complicated than what they really need to be. And in the end, if we do that, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to achieve your goals of your digital learning environment. The best thing we can do just with students in our classes is to make things as simple as possible, make them easy to understand so that we can actually implement what we're trying to do. When our school board approved our implementation plan, the first thing we did is we went around to each of our schools and presented to the staff what this plan would look like. In our very first presentation at one of our schools, at the end for the questions, one of the teachers said, "It just feels like we're moving too fast. Shouldn't we maybe take a year or two to kind of look to see, what are some of the best practices in integrating technology into the classrooms?" And if we hadn't gone on site visits and if we hadn't asked questions, I think I would have pulled my hair out, because I feel like, what do you think we've been doing for the past decade? But really, it was a good question, because like Tim often tells our admin team, perception is reality. If that teacher perceives that we're going too fast, in their world, we're going too fast. So what we did is we changed our presentation a little bit. We laid out a little bit of our history. Our journey kind of started in 2004. In 2004, we had a team of teachers and administrators that went to the T+L conference in Boulder, Colorado. They went there with the idea of trying to find out what were best practices of using educational technology. They came back with was a focused target on integrating technology into the curriculum. From the very beginning, that started out by saying the goal is not learning to use technology, but it's using technology to learn. And we've continued to emphasize that with our teachers for the past decade. A language arts teacher is not here to teach how to use the computer. They're here to teach language arts using the tools of the 21st century. In 2005, we changed a little bit of how our different departments work together. One of the key ones was our technology, staff development, and curriculum departments. In the past, these worked a lot in isolation, especially the technology department. In the past, that technology was really focused on purchasing hardware and software. Once it was set up, the technology department was, it works, now it's yours to use. And what really changed during that time is those departments started meeting together and working collaboratively and working towards a common goal, because it became very evident that when our curriculum departments started buying technology, that affected the technology department. And when the technology department did upgrades, that affected curriculum. And staff development was in the middle because they had to make sure people could use all of it. Around 2006, we were very fortunate to be awarded an E2T2 grant, which funded training for the Intel Teach program. We spent about 4 years where 1/3 of our staff completed a 40-hour technology integration course. Not everybody on our staff was eager and excited to take a 40-hour technology integration course. But what it did is it really grew the number of teachers that saw the benefits of using technology in the classroom. It was a big commitment, and that grant helped us get the ball rolling. In 2007, one thing that we saw is that, okay, we're not going to get everybody to commit to a 40-hour program. And that grant was going to be for a limited number of years. So what we did is we kind of took what we learned from the Intel Teach program and kind of designed our own incentive program, another avenue for teachers to be able to use technology, learn technology, and implement it into their classroom. It kind of looked like 3 stages. Number 1, we asked teachers to learn about integrating technology in their classes, create something that they could use in their classes, and then share that with their colleagues. And we've continued to focus on those 3 areas of our professional development. The most important part of that, it was that our teachers were leading that staff development. I can get up in front of our teachers and talk about using technology in the classroom, but I've been out of the classroom now for 10 years. It has a lot more impact when their colleagues are in front of them saying, this works great, or sharing experiences of their students in the classroom. In 2008, another commitment that we made in the district that Tim kind of mentioned was the fact that our middle school and high school principals decided all teachers in 6 through 12 were going to have a Moodle page for their class, every single course that they taught. This did, the major thing that this did for us is it provided a consistent platform for our students and for our teachers. It made it a lot easier for our teachers to collaborate in their curriculum when they're all on a consistent platform. It was a lot easier for the staff development team to offer staff development when we had everybody on the same platform versus 20 teachers using this, 20 teachers using that, and students being caught in the middle not knowing what they're supposed to be using in their classrooms. In 2009, teachers really started grabbing hold of digital storytelling. What I loved about this is that it showed me that we were starting to transition from just using computers to research and write to where students were actually creating content. And it's that creation level that we really want to get our students and teachers to, where they're creating content in the classroom. They're building on the knowledge of what they learn in the classroom, and they're engaged in higher levels of learning. In 2010, we had been using Google Docs and Google Slides and Google Spreadsheets for a while, but we became a Google Apps for Education school district. It was a slow start, but what really helped us kind of accelerate that start was when we installed a single sign-on so that when students and teachers went into the Moodle pages that they were going to every day, they were 1 click away from going into their Google Apps area. And that has just continued to improve along the way because of that easy access. 2011 was another major tipping point for us. And it was at that point where our teachers drove this next step in the process. Our teachers were the ones that approached the curriculum department and said, as we're on this next cycle, we really don't need more textbooks. What we need is more access to technology. Our computer labs were filled, our mobile carts were checked out throughout the day, and it was great because teachers were using technology, but it was our access to that technology that was really limiting how far we could go. If you're a science teacher and you teach 3 sections throughout the day, hey, it's great if the lab is open for periods 2 and 3, but if it's not open 5th period for that same class that you're teaching that day, it's kind of hard to keep your students together in the end, teachers were ending up having to create 2 lesson plans for that same day. So departments started to request mobile devices instead of printed textbooks, and they were using their Moodle pages really as their main platform for their curriculum. In 2012, our school board showed a lot of leadership when they asked the technology department to come in and kind of give a report on our current reality. And in the end, what they wanted to know is, where are we going to be 5 years from now if we continue on this same path? And to be honest, we had kind of grown as far as we could with our current budget. At that time, we had so many devices with labs and mobile carts that our budget, all it could do is just sustain where we were currently at. If we had a vision of moving any farther than where we were, we couldn't do it with the current setup. So we assembled a team to start doing some research on what were the best practices and what were the current trends of other school districts in the state. That research really led us to the trend was one-to-one digital learning environments. Of course, those look different in a lot of different places, but that in the end, that was what the research indicated. So in 2013, after we presented that, the school board said, well, what would it take for New Prague to implement a digital learning environment? The first team, that wasn't their task to say how we're going to implement it. Their task was to say, what was the growing trend? So another team, a larger team, was assembled to say, okay, let's start looking at other school districts that have been successful with digital learning. And with that, we asked a lot of questions. We found out what was successful in other school districts, and we applied that to what would be successful here for a district our size. The digital learning proposal was approved in November of 2013 by our school board. And then at that time, we started actually talking about our rollout plans. In 2014, so the beginning of this school year, the high school, every single student started the school year with a device on the very first day of school. Like Tim mentioned, we're a high school of about 1,200, but the January before that, before students received their devices, so about 7 months before students received their devices, all of the teachers received their devices. Because one of the things that we learned talking with other school districts is how important it was to have those devices in teachers' hands before the students have those devices. We have to build that comfort level with the teachers who are going to be integrating the technology into their classrooms. This year, we're continuing on to phase 2 of our plan. In phase 2, all of the middle school teachers this year received their devices and professional development. What was great about it this year is that, there's a lot of anxiety with your staff when you start talking about going into a one-to-one. So to me, that was one of the most important things that we learned, is it doesn't matter how long you've been integrating technology in your school districts. It doesn't matter how long you've been using laptops in your classrooms. When you start talking about a one-to-one learning environment, it will raise the anxiety level of teachers in your district. And if you're prepared for that, it can really help lower that anxiety. One thing that really helped this year with our middle school staff is that during that professional development time, we had some high school teachers and students come down, and we had a panel discussion with them where they got to present a little bit about how they were using devices in the classroom and how the one-to-one environment changed the classroom a little bit compared to the old cart model. Having those students in there as well was a great time for the teachers to ask questions and give some feedback. And really since that time, our Google Drive use has just continued to grow exponentially, especially the collaboration part of it. So when a teacher asks, are we moving too fast? When they kind of see that history of what we've been doing in our district, it's a lot easier for them to see our vision has really been consistent throughout the whole time. Not saying there weren't curves along the way, because with technology, it's hard to know what's going to be available even 3 years down the road. Throughout this process of researching and implementing, we started to notice a lot of different themes that were important for planning out your implementation in your districts. Tim mentioned the very first one. Your leadership team has to have a clear vision about where you're going. There has to be a plan for ongoing professional development. Obviously, there has to be technology, but if you just focus on the technology, you're missing out on a big part of the digital learning environment. And of course, it has to be funded so that you know that you have sustainability. When you roll this out, you're going to be flooded with questions about, what about this? What devices? How do we do this? What happens in this situation? Those are all important questions, but it can't be where your team starts with this planning process. Instead, it's very important to know the answers to these questions. First of all, there's going to be a ton of questions asked. You don't have to know all of them before your rollout. But you do have to know, why are we doing this? If you don't know why you're doing this, you're missing the most important step. It's important to have buy-in, but you're never going to have 100% buy-in. For me, that was really impactful when I saw these very successful school districts in their digital learning environments, and when they came out and said, we don't have everybody on board with what we're doing. We have the majority, but there's still people that are resistant to using technology. For me, that was just a big weight off my shoulders, because I felt like we had to get everybody on board with it. And as soon as that school district said that, it just made me feel a lot better. If we're confident about our why we're doing this, we know we're doing the right thing. And lastly, change is hard. If your goal is to transform your school district, it means that there's going to be changes to the budget, changes to expectations, changes to teaching, and changes are extremely hard, harder for some people than others. But if you can give a clear vision about why you're doing it, you're more likely to get people on board with it. That why is where you need to start. Starting with, why are we doing this, and having a clear vision and being able to communicate that, which comes down to that vision and leadership. If you haven't read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, I highly recommend it. And if you don't have time to read it, at least spend 18 minutes watching his TED Talk, where he talks about starting with why. And there's a quote out of his book that says, leadership requires two things: a vision for the world that does not yet exist, and the ability to communicate it. This is extremely important because all of us sitting in here were educated in a model that was designed in the 20th century, not the 21st century. We didn't go to school where technology was an important part of how we learn. And it's hard for teachers because we tend to teach the way we were taught. And if we weren't taught with technology in the classroom, it's really hard for teachers to picture, what does that even look like? We tend to go back to the way we were taught. So what our team did is we started with our mission, vision, and values. New Prague School District, the mission is to engage and support everyone in high levels of learning. It's our vision to be a premier school district that models excellence and embraces the 21st century. I don't know how we could look a parent in the eye and say that we're meeting our mission and vision and values if we weren't using technology in the classroom. How could we honestly say we're preparing these students for the 21st century if technology isn't a part of their education? So I did a little research. We have about 40 school districts represented today. What I did is I copied and pasted each one of our vision statements and put it into Wordle. If we were to combine all of our vision statements, this is what it would look like. All of us in here are focused on students in learning. And if you keep your why pointed to students in learning, you're going to be successful in your school district. We talked about professional development. That theme isn't just having a 6-hour professional development before teachers get their devices. It has to be ongoing. This quote says, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." And that point can't be stressed enough with your teachers. Your teachers are what make this digital learning environment successful. And they have to know that what they're learning today, it's going to change, and you're going to be back, 2 or 3 years down the road saying, okay, Our student information system now looks like this. Or our device is now this. That technology continues to change, but if we continue to be focused on students and learning, we'll be successful. I mentioned the fact that our professional development is more effective when it's brought on or presented by the teachers. That capacity building is the most important part. And when we went through our incentive program and the Intel Teach program, that really helped us build our current professional development model, where teachers learned about using technology in the classroom. They created things that they could use in their classroom, but then they went back and they shared with their colleagues, whether it was on a staff development day or just simply sharing a lesson plan or something they created on Moodle. It's that constant sharing in our PLCs that keeps our professional development ongoing. It's not a coincidence that Nick Meyer is pictured here in 2007, staring into that gigantic CRT monitor, learning about integrating technology, that we also have Nick Meyer here working with a student on a Chromebook, helping that student understand social studies, not teaching them how to use technology, but how to learn with technology. Another common theme, obviously, is the technology itself. I said in the beginning our goal was not to teach how to use technology, but how to use technology to learn. We really focus on three main areas of that platform: the consistent platform of our learning management system of Moodle, using our productivity and collaboration tools found in Google. And one of the things that we found is that when we decided to go to a Chromebook, a lot of our teachers were very anxious about, I don't know how to use a Chromebook. I said, well, do you know how to use Chrome? Well, yeah, I know how to use Chrome. Okay, that's a Chromebook. And before teachers even got their devices, we had them stressing that our default platform for a browser is using Chrome. And once students or teachers got used to using Chrome, it was so much easier for them to transition into a Chromebook. Hard to tell in this picture a little bit, but this is my daughter a little over a year ago when she was in 7th grade. And when we talk about using technology and the importance of it, I was a little hesitant, and my daughter, you know, of course, just like every kid, Dad, everybody's got a cell phone except for me. Well, she was in 7th grade, and we were a little hesitant about giving her a cell phone. What does she need a cell phone for? We drive her everywhere. But she was starting to be in more activities, and you didn't always know when the bus was going to be back, and we saw some advantages for us as parents, honestly, that it would be kind of nice for her to have a device. So that Christmas, she got one. And it was about a month after that that we were sitting out at a restaurant, and I look over, and this is what I see. And I'm about ready to explode. We're sitting out as a family, having a nice dinner, having nice conversations. All right, it was just me and my wife talking, and our kids were kind of bored. So I look over, and I see Morgan doing this. Well, the next morning what I did is I wrote her social studies teacher an email message. I said, Mr. Grensteiner, I thought I should share this story with you. We were at Carboni's last night. I looked over at Morgan, and I couldn't believe she was texting her friends at the table. I was ready to take her phone away when I noticed what she was doing. Studying her social studies flashcards on Quizlet with her device. To me, the light bulb just went off, and everything that we've been talking about of anytime, anywhere learning really clicked for me. This is the power of that content being digital and students being able to access it anytime, anywhere. And of course, that doesn't happen without funding. And if you're going to do this, like Tim mentioned here in the beginning, if we're going to do this, talking about the digital learning environment, we're going to show our commitment to it by placing it in our budget. When Tim made that statement, being a part of the technology team, again, that heavy weight was just lifted off my shoulders because I just felt like this is going to be a sustainable plan. He's making a commitment to it by saying we're going to place this in our budget. And it's not all just about that funding, because these themes, they all overlap. we can't upgrade our technology without it being a significant part of the budget planning process. So for example, when we really starting to integrate technology in the classroom, what really clicked for teachers is when we got out of that lab model and started having carts where they could bring the technology into their classrooms. And it worked great in the beginning until as we started adding more and more laptops, and pretty soon our bandwidth started having trouble handling it. Our Wi-Fi had trouble connecting all the devices. Our switches couldn't handle all the traffic. And we started to be overloaded with the amount of technology because all of our funding was going into buying devices, and we hadn't had a chance really to expand and scale the network that was needed to handle all those devices. But again, that's where that commitment by the leadership team of saying, okay, we got to make this and we got to make this successful. If your network isn't ready for a digital learning environment, the worst thing you can do is start it. In the end, this kind of ended up being one of the best things that happened to us, is teachers experiencing wanting that technology, but it not working very well. Because when our technology department lined everything up and got the technology working smoothly, the teachers and students appreciated it so much more. So again, don't look at these themes as being in isolation, because they all overlap and they're all dependent on one another. In the end, I want you to leave today with 4 main themes. Number 1, the road to success is not a straight line. There's going to be curves. Right now, what you want to do is ask as many questions as possible so that you can anticipate what those curves are. Number 2, don't move too fast. But also, don't let one person convince you that you're moving too fast just because that's their perception. If you're confident that you're going at the right pace, keep your clear vision. Number 3, keep it simple. It doesn't have to be overly complex. And last but not least, answer that why with a clear vision, and make sure you communicate that with your staff and your main stakeholders. I want to thank you for being here today, and I encourage you to ask a lot of questions today, and wish you the best of luck on your journey.